Hello, everyone, and welcome to the VeryReasonablePilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles Lung. With me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell, Charles. Excited. Another episode of the podcast. I think this is the first time I've recorded this podcast late in the day. Usually, it's very early. It's early in the morning for me now, and now it's
much
super
later
late for you as well.
Yeah, it's nearly 11 o'clock at night for me, and it is, 5:45 for you?
Yeah. This is different.
Yeah.
Very different. I think we've done a couple that were late before, but this is it's been a while. Usually mornings.
This is a strange experience for me. I just got back home from work.
Different, energy here. You're going to be tired.
Yeah, we're a little bit more awake.
Who knows?
I think I'm going to be energized by the power of podcasting and friendship.
All right.
That's what I think. And we both know at the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast that the world is in a tumultuous place. Wherever you stand or sit or lie on the political spectrum, the world is in a tumultuous place right now. And so we are going to do our very best to avoid any political references in this week's episode.
Oh boy.
So the name of this week is No Fear, No Limits, No Equal. And here is the elevator pitch, effectively. A supervillain with an anti-authoritarian bent inspires a grassroots political movement that eventually gets him elected president.
So like Lex Luthor, kinda.
Yeah, a little bit Lex Luthor,
Comics.
a little bit Homelander, a little bit, but like a little bit. The most inspiration I got for this idea was from the Immortal Hulk comic by Al Ewing. If you haven't read it, it's 9 volumes. It's really fucking long, like 50 issues or something. But it's incredible. It's the only Hulk comic that I've ever read beginning to end because it's the Hulk. I mean, like, I like the Hulk, but I like the Hulk in the same way I like Marmaduke. It's fine, But this comic is incredible. And there is a big arc in which the Hulk's, like, alter ego, evil mastermind version of himself is basically starting, like, a domestic terrorism movement in the U.S. about, like, attacking industry and corporations and stuff. And so that was my biggest inspo. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Another inspiration was actually our own show, Defenders of Strange, which came out probably 20-something, 30-something episodes ago.
Yeah, that was your pitch with like the human fingernail.
The human scab.
Scab, that's what it was. I don't know why I keep thinking it's a fingernail.
Yeah, Pathaholic and Mother and all these weird, crazy superheroes who have like weird, gross powers, but they use them to fight evil. So let's just get into the show. Our main character is Frederick Schultz, aka Dr. Deathless, a supervillain whose powers mean that he lives forever, but goes through a life cycle every 10 years. After years of fighting against the forces of good and the status quo, Dr. Deathless decides to use his experience and knowledge to gain power and in a legal and much more morally bankrupt way, politics. And so let me explain Dr. Deathless's powers before we get into it, right? Okay. He's an immortal guy. Think like Vandal Savage. But his life cycle exists in sort of a 10-year span, where he is a baby at the beginning of the 10 years, and by the end of the 10 years, he is a decrepit old man. And as the timer resets on that 10 years, his new baby form crawls out of the corpse of his old decrepit man form. And when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about that jellyfish that's functionally immortal that scientists discovered, where every time it gets sick or injured or it just gets too old, it like just falls down to the bottom of the ocean floor and a new one is born, like a phoenix, basically. But it's a jellyfish, and it's real. And so that's Frederick Schultz, a.k.a. Dr. Deathless's his powers. And his name is only Frederick Schultz because he needs a name to run for president, because this guy he's Vandal Savage. Like, he's been alive for millennia, and he's been battling this same superhero for millennia, who, you know, who represents all that is quote unquote good and nice in the world. And Dr. Deathless is kind of like all that's evil and corrupt in the world. But we're going to see throughout the show that that's not really the case, you know? And so our second main character is one Stella Delaney, who is a well-renowned campaign manager who's worked on dozens of different political campaigns throughout her long and storied career, but she has become blacklisted in the American political, you know, think of a word. What's a good word? Just American society. Politics in general. Because of some, like, maybe some stuff that she shouldn't have been doing with her former boss. And, you know, we'll get into it as the show continues and we all find out everybody's secret, depressing origin story. But she's been blacklisted and she hasn't been working in campaigns for a very long time. And the show begins with Stella Delaney, and she receives this very strange letter addressed to her that tells her to come to this very specific place at this very specific time, you know, and she shows up, she gets a bus because she's, you know, not working, and so she can't afford a car or an Uber or anything, and she gets a bus and she arrives, and she's kind of like, you can tell she's got a bit of a pompous nature to her. She's like, I'm too good to be on the bus. I shouldn't be on the bus, and you can see she's kind of, you know, full of herself in that way. Yeah. But she needs it. So she shows up to this, like, massive manor estate that is, like, smack dab in the middle of New York City. Like a building that may have been built at the beginning of New York City's, like, establishment as a place. And just because of historical reasons and zoning laws and stuff, it's just never been knocked down. And she goes in and she's shown in by this, like, very not kind, but very, like, proper mannered butler. And he takes her coat, he gets her a cup of coffee and all this stuff. And then he says, the master will see you now, right? Ooh. And she's shown into this massive labyrinthian library, right? And as she wanders through for a few minutes, she sees, like, books that shouldn't be there. Like, books that are so old that they should have turned to dust by now, you know? You're not going to see, like, the Magna Carta or anything. But I mean, like, first edition of The Hobbit. Or, like, give me another famous book. The Canterbury Tales, Bible. Right? Stuff that's, like, really old. And she is kind of like, whoa, this guy's a collector. And she finally gets to the back of the library and she sees this old man sitting at a table. And his face is covered in darkness, right? And she is like, what do you want? You wanted to see me? What's happening? And he says, in the event of my death, which is coming soon, because I am an old man, we'll write better dialogue when the show is made. That's good. I'm an old man. You will be running this campaign. And if this campaign is successful and this candidate is elected to this office, you will receive my entire fortune, which is hundreds of millions of dollars, along with the state. It's all been signed over in your name. It is the only you're the only recipient of my will, beneficiary of my will. And she's like taken aback, and she's like, what? Why are you doing this? I don't even know you. Why don't you have kids or grandkids or whatever? And he's like, I hate my kids. My grandkids are spoiled brats. My ex-wife is a bitch. Like, I hate everyone here. And I believe in this politician. I believe in this guy's message. And so, and I know that you have a reason to need this. Like, I'm not just hiring some campaign manager who, if it fails, they can always just work again. You're never working in politics again unless you take this job. I know you need it, right? So, sign here and, like, your assignment will be sent to you in the morning. And she's kind of like, and then she remembers the bus, and she remembers how much she's struggling to survive. And then she just signs her name quickly and storms out of the room, kind of not angry, but, like, frustrated that she's been put in this position by her choices in life, you know, and by just circumstance. And by, you know, maybe some people did some bad stuff to her also. And then the butler gives her back her coat, and he gets a car pulled up for her that drives her back to her shitty 1-bedroom apartment, and she gets in it back home, and she's like got, a stovetop and like a can of beans in the refrigerator, and that's it, Yeah. And so she eats her can of beans, and she like kind of goes to sleep, excited but also nervous for the next day, right? And then we cut to her working inside this political campaign, and it is insane. It's like all of these people just like overnight were like pulled from the earth and put here to do this campaign. And she's organizing all of it. She's talking to people about routes for canvassers and all this stuff, and the announcement, right? And she's like, the announcement, we have to announce the campaign. And so she goes into this office, and we see this this gentleman. He's sitting with his back to the camera, right? And she says, Mr. Schultz, we have the camera crew ready outside. We're 5 minutes to get till we go live. And he turns around and he says, please call me Dr. Deathless, right? And we get like kind of a supervillain laugh, right? And then maybe we have kind of a exposition from Stella, where we kind of go through, and she, talks over a montage of Dr. Deathless having all sorts of crazy supervillain fights with his arch nemesis, Captain Forever, who is also an immortal being, but he does not have this like weird, creepy baby man situation,
Yeah.
Like he doesn't die and then come back alive. He just keeps on living, as most of us think immortality works. And so she explains this to the audience, and then Dr. Deathless stands back up, and he shakes her hand very gently, like he does the handshake that old men and I do sometimes, where you shake someone's hand and you grab their hand, the other side of their hand with your left hand, right? Mm-hmm. So you're like double shaking. And she's like, I believe in you, Stella. I know that you can do this. I know that we can do this. And she's kind of like, this is, okay. And then Dr. Deathless goes out. He goes onto the front of his campaign offices, and you've got all these hundreds of paparazzi all there, and you got like police barricades and all sorts of shit, and they're all snapping photos, and Dr. Deathless like stops them. He tries to get their attention, and they just won't stop talking and snapping photos and asking questions, and he finally like uses his supervillain voice, and everybody shuts up immediately. And Dr. Deathless then begins to announce his campaign. I have some of the things he says written up here. Dr. Deathless makes a rousing speech in which he demands the people rise up against their oppressors, that their heroes do not uphold a system, that their heroes do nothing but uphold a broken system and reinforce your place at the bottom of it. Politicians lie and tell you that your only salvation is through the high road. While your enemies rally in force, we must suffer in silence, afraid to cross party lines. The high road is a dead end. The only way for the people to take their power back is through force, is through me, right? And that's how the speech ends. Obviously, we get Aaron Sorkin in here to fucking punch it up a little bit. I'm not a speechwriter. That's basically Dr. Deathless's whole campaign thing, is that like all of these politicians, they keep telling you to do things, they keep telling you how the world should be, right? But none of them live their life like this. They all have fucking yachts, and they all fucking have investment banker friends, and they're all millionaires, right? And the people who aren't millionaires yet soon will be, right? They're heroes, the superheroes of this world do nothing to help you. They simply uphold the status quo, right? They just make sure everything stays at the same, Me, Dr. Deathless, I represent change. And that's what you people want. That's what you're after, right? Your only change is through me. I'm the only one who sees the world for what it truly is, right? And his campaign slogan is no fear, no limits, no equal.
Oh, that
and
title.
And that's a picture of him.
And then we get the title sequence.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Well, and that's how the first episode ends, is with Dr. Deathless making this amazing, this rousing speech that gets the people going and gets people excited, and then we see like newspaper articles.
That could be really good if like the way it ends is like he ends with his slogan, right? And as he says the words, it's like they just appear on the screen, like he says "no fear," and then like that appears, and then "no limits, no equal," and that all appears like in red, and like maybe like drips down a little bit or something, and then it just goes to black.
Maybe dripping down. Credits. And then maybe we could do like a match cut of the words on the screen, and then as someone like tapes up a campaign poster of his on like a wall, or maybe somebody's like spray painting it on like in public view, right? And that's the campaign, and you just have a picture of him kind of looking. I would want his campaign poster to be halfway between like Stalin-esque propaganda posters and the 2008 Hope poster, right, for Obama's campaign. Is it Hope or is it Change? I can't remember.
I think it's Change.
Doesn't fucking matter. Is it Change? It's Change. It has to be Change. You're right. That it's like kind of a mix of those two aesthetics in a way, and that's how the first episode ends, right? Is with Dr. Deathless announcing his campaign and us getting an idea of the world and all sorts of stuff, you know. And there are superheroes in this world, but they're not. It's not like Superman or Batman, right? It's not like there's no world-ending events. There's no fucking dark sides or apocalypses or anything like that. It's just like he stops muggers and, you know, petty thieves, but he never goes after like hedge fund managers or corrupt politicians or anything like that, you know?
So like low-tier vigilantes.
Yeah, but they're renowned as like world-renowned heroes. You know, people all love them and they all see them as heroes, but they do nothing to actually change anything about the world. They just, again, hold up the status quo as if it's, you know, perfect. And we will find out throughout the series that most of these heroes are either very mentally unwell or they are paid by the government and by corporations in order to keep it like that, you know? Bread and circuses, sort of. They're there to keep the people, you know, distracted and happy with their little, oh, he saved the little girl from a burning building and all that stuff, so I can, you know, keep increasing rent prices, or I can keep decreasing regulations so that the buildings keep burning down, but we have Captain Forever here to save us, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then, so that's how the first episode ends. I have a bunch of episode ideas here for you. I'm thinking that how each episode will work is that Dr. Deathless will have like a campaign problem that Stella has to deal with, and Stella will also have a sort of personal problem that she has to deal with in tandem with the campaign problem. And so I have an idea for Dr. Deathless. Has the first, you know, thing that gets revealed after his campaign announcement is that he is he's scandalous. He's scandalized because he's been sleeping with a married woman, you know? He's been sleeping with a married woman. Oh my god, that's so evil. And even worse, do you want to know who the woman's husband is? That's right. It's his arch enemy, Captain Forever. Dr. Deathless has been sleeping with his arch enemy's wife for like years. And, damn. You know, that storyline ends with him on TV being like, I'm a fucking supervillain. I'm not changing that. This isn't me saying I'm not a villain anymore. This is me defining what your heroes are, right? I'm a villain. I'm sleeping with people's wives. I don't give a fuck, you know? And maybe Stella thinks that that's not the approach to go, right? They have to come out apologetic or you know, sorry or something like that. And he's like, no. You know I hired you, but also, no. I'm going to do my campaign my way, right? So there's always that butting of heads between Deathless and Stella. But Deathless, like, knows that he needs her, right? She knows this system, this stuff, more than he does. And he does need her expertise about stuff. And while Dr. Deathless is dealing with the scandal of sleeping with Captain Forever's wife, Stella has to is contacted by her old second in command when she was a high flying campaign manager, right? She had a second person, like kind of midway between like a vice president and a fucking personal assistant, right? And now that person has become a well-renowned campaign manager of their own. And so the person, let's just call him David. David decides to have a meeting with Stella, right? And Stella is a little hesitant to go because she's worried that David might just be like rubbing it in, that she's working for a supervillain or whatever. But David's like really friendly and nice to her. And so they sit down, they have a nice chat, they have a dinner. And at the end, David's like, you need to give me the inside scoop. I know you, Stella. I know you wouldn't work for a supervillain, right? For real. I know you don't believe in his cause, right? So you need to give me information so I can make sure he doesn't win. Because turns out her second in command, David, is working for the opposing presidential candidate, who is the incumbent president, who's just like some doddering old man, right? I wonder where I got an idea for that from. And Stella has to come to terms with the fact that even though Dr. Deathless is not a good person, he's never claimed to be, and his message is resonating with the people of America, but also with her to an extent, and she won't admit it. She won't say, I believe in his message, but she's kind of feeling herself be taken over to the dark side, if you want to talk about it like that. Like, she can feel herself being convinced by his rhetoric and his passion and his, like, just genuine campaign ideas. You know, like, when I'm elected president, I'm going to reduce the military budget to 1/3 of what it is right now and put the rest of the money into STEM classes, you know? Yeah. In school, because America's been falling behind in math and science. And she's like, I mean, that seems a little drastic, but it seems like good. I mean, STEM does need more money. Education needs more money in America, right? And so she sleeps on the idea that David gives to her, where she would have to go behind his back and basically be a mole. And she decides, no, I'm not going to do this, right? I'm not going to rat out this guy, you know? And David's like, calls her an idiot, says like, you know, you may have had a way back into like political campaigning with this. You may have been able to get back into politics if you help me out with this. But now this is your legacy, you know? This is the kind of person you are. This is who you're working for, a supervillain. And I want to make abundantly clear, people refer to him as a supervillain, and he refers to himself as a supervillain. He's like, this is who I am. I see who you call heroes, and I'm proud to be a villain, you know? That sort of thing. And that could be another one of his campaign slogans, because, you know, they have a ton, right? And then another idea I had is when Dr. Deathless goes on a talk show, like a Monday morning talk show, and he accidentally threatens all of Europe by mentioning the status quo-ification of their politics and how that must be eradicated, you know? And Dr. Deathless accidentally seems to suggest that maybe if he was elected president, he would attempt to eradicate countries he disagreed with, and he has to like kind of go on the back foot, because he's like, that's really not a good look, because we do need the support of other countries, you know, for this campaign. We do need like our American allies to support me, at least some of them. And so he does, you know, go back on that. Maybe he does like a sort of like a niceties trip across Europe, where he goes and he meets presidents and kings and queens and whatever. And meanwhile, while he's like away doing his like apology tour, basically, Stella begins to have an attraction to one of the lowly canvassers. You know, she finds herself being attracted to this lowly canvasser. He's like a grad student or whatever. He's just doing this for like credits or like to look good on a CV or whatever, right? And they begin an illicit affair, right? They you know, have hot, steamy, bad boy sex in the campaign office, which of course Dr. Deathless has bugged with cameras and audio. And so the final shot of that episode is Dr. Deathless looking at his laptop, seeing them doing it in the campaign office, and him like just smirking, because now he has like real fucking blackmail on her that he can use if she ever tries to fuck him over, Yeah. And then my last episode idea is Dr. Deathless giving away all of his quote-unquote evil inventions to charity, such that they can use them for their causes in exchange for support. And I want, like, Deathless's inventions aren't evil. It's always, like, it's stuff like matter-changing machines and shit like that. Nothing that's explicitly, like, doomsday devices. Just he chooses to use it as a evil thing, but he has, like, a grenade that he can program to change any one molecule into any other kind of molecule, and he is using it, like, to turn, fucking, like, people into glass, or blow up banks, and turn bank vaults into bubbles or something like that. But the technology could just as easily be turned into, like, hey, we're gonna turn all of this rock, like, all these rocks into, like, food. And we're gonna turn all of this, like, all this grass, we're gonna turn it into gold so that we can buy stuff, like clothes and stuff, So I want Deathless's inventions to be kind of, they're very much neutral in terms of whether or not they do bad or do harm or good, you know? And he just always used them for harm, but he can just as easily use them for good. And so he gains the support of these charities. Meanwhile, Stella decides to do a bit of digging into the campaign, and she discovers that Dr. Deathless isn't actually funding this campaign himself. Oh. A massive soda corporation is funding this campaign, right? Like, Coca-Cola-esque, And so that'll be one of the underlying things, is she's, like, researching, like, this company that's funding this campaign. She's like, why, all this stuff. And those are the ideas I have throughout the thing. But I do have the finale, right, of the show figured out to a degree. Deathless wins the campaign, right? It's a close race, but he does win. He becomes president, right? And he goes to the Oval Office, and he's, like, very proud of himself. He's maybe even, like, he's dressed in, like, supervillain regalia throughout the entire show. And then in the final episode, when he's finally president, he actually is wearing, like, a suit, Yeah.
Does he have, like, a helmet? I've just pictured him with a helmet on this whole time.
I hadn't pictured him with a helmet, but I kind of think he should have a helmet now that you say it, because that's funny. Because helmets are cool.
Like a Darth Vader-y or, like, Victor Von Doom kind of helmet.
I was thinking maybe a half helmet, right? Like Daredevil. So you can see the bottom half of his face, and he's got, like, the top half is, all sorts of, like, creepy mask, like, stuff. Neither of us are graphic designers.
Like, fucking, not like horns, but, like, sort of like Batman kind of ear. Like, there's got to be spikes coming out the top. You know what I mean? Like
There's
Sauron's helmet
spikes.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, sort of like like Sauron has, like, a crown sort of in his helmet thing. Maybe it's like that.
Yeah, a spiky, weird, overly complicated looking helmet.
Overly tall,
that doesn't
too,
do
so maybe
anything.
he has to, like, kind of, like, bend down when he goes through doorways.
He's got a duck, yeah. Maybe that could be a running gag, is, like, he gets too excited throughout the show, and he'll stand up really fast in his office, but he's very tall, and his helmet's also very tall, and so he just accidentally hits the styrofoam ceiling, and he's like, fucking, god damn it. All this shit keeps falling on his head, and he doesn't know what to do about it, until eventually he just gets the ceilings moved up. And it's like, mate, what? You could have just moved to a different building. If you had the money to get this old building renovated and get the ceilings moved up, you could have just gone to a different building, but whatever. But the end of the show, right? Deathless is president, and she discovers that the soda corporation that's been funding this whole time is not owned by Frederick Schultz, but is in fact owned by Edward Schultz, who is a 97-year-old man. And then she goes back to the house at the very beginning of the series, and she discovers that it's owned by Edward Schultz, and the man inside the house, Edward Schultz himself, is Dr. Deathless's son, who was born, I don't have I'm bad at math, but he was born in 1920, you know?
Okay.
Born in 1930, right? And so he's decided, you know, his father came to him right after he'd been reincarnated, and Edward Schultz took care of his baby father until the father, you know, became a man again. And this time, Deathless, like, explained his plan to Schultz, Edward. And he explains all of this stuff and what he's going to do, and Edward gets behind it. But he also knows that his father's son, can't do it alone, and so that's why he hired Stella. And that's why Dr. Deathless is so, like, confident that Stella is the right choice to run this campaign, because he and his son decided that she, you know, they figured out together that she would be, you know, the great leader of this campaign that would help them get into the White House, right? And so at the end of the show, Stella becomes the scion, the heir to this Coca-Cola company's fortune, and she becomes like the chief. She owns the most shares. I forget what that's called. Shareholders. She becomes the chief shareholder, and she gets all this money and all this power, and she realizes that, you know, although she's been fighting for the quote-unquote little people this entire show, at the end she is become one of the, you know, major corporations in this country that is ruining everything. And it's just kind of this, like, cyclical nature as represented by Dr. Deathless's own powers, right? That you always begin with the best of intentions, but people always, like, you know, will inevitably lead to darkness, right? And Dr. Deathless and people like him, people who can use their darkness to inspire people, right? They will always take advantage of that, you know? But that's the show. No fear, no limit. Oh wait, no fear, no limits, no equal. That was the idea I had. Yeah, I know it's a little short this week, but yeah.
I was not what I expected, to be honest. You told me you were going to do a superhero man called Dr. Deathless. But I didn't see that coming. I didn't see the political campaign. I didn't see the ending.
Yeah.
Soda company. What's the name of the soda company?
I hadn't thought of a name for a soda company. Popco, Fizz
Pop.
Fizz Pop. There you go. Fizz Pop. Perfect.
Love Fizz Pop. Fizz Pop. If there was a soda called Fizz Pop, I don't buy soda, but I would buy that. I'd buy Fizz Pop.
Yeah. I don't buy soda very often. I give Fizz Pop a try.
That's such a great name. We should make a soda company.
Yeah, we should fuck this podcast and shit.
Yeah.
You don't need this. We can start a soda company.
Fizz Pop.
Do you know how to make soda? I don't know how to make soda.
It shouldn't be. It couldn't be that hard, right? Like, it's just like sugar and carbonation and water.
If a whole bunch of drug addicts in the fucking 30s could figure it out, I'm sure you and I can figure it out. You know?
Make it red. Red soda.
Make it bright red. Fucking like blood red. Fucking drink it and you think you're bleeding out of your mouth.
Oh, okay. I was thinking like very light red is what I was thinking, like a very light red.
Casual red is what you're saying. Less dark. Yeah.
Like a vanilla red.
Vanilla red. Mm-hmm. Basic bitch red. Missionary position red is what you're saying.
Anyway.
Yeah, but that's the show. No fear, no limits, no equal. I thought it was fun. But thank you all for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, has been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloff. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. And remember, we will be here next week with a brand new televisual series, which will be titled, drum roll please, The Yesterday Boys.
Ooh, I'm excited. Ooh. I've already got it written, and I might have slightly changed the title. I guess you'll find out next week. Oh.
It's the Yesterday Girls now. Too many boys in our TV shows. It's the girls. It's the Yesterday Girlies. All right. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.